here at MNIT Allahabad. I would like to welcome all of you on this gracious moment. Dean, in presence of Dean Students Welfare, Professor K.N. Pandey sir, Faculty in charge Students Counseling, Dr. Abhishek Kumar sir, and Assistant Faculty in charge Student Counseling, Dr. Ashutosh Mishra. I would also like to welcome our esteemed guest for today's session, Professor Braj Bhushan, to share his ideas on the today's topic of webinar, Managing Mental Health Challenges During and Post COVID-19. Before starting over the topic, let me introduce our honorable speaker to you. Professor Bhushan started his journey with fieldwork in National Task Force project of ICMR, Indian Council of Medical Research, in year 1995, and currently he is the head of Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Kanpur. He has completed his masters from Banaras Hindu University and pursues PhD from Baba Saheb Bhimarao Ambedkar University in neuropsychology. He has also served the post of senior lecturer at IIT Guwahati and visiting professor at Kyushu University, Japan. His current areas of work are cognitive neuropsychology, cognitive ergonomics, and trauma psychology. Sir has been awarded with numerous awards all around the globe, such as Sri Devraj Chair at IIT Kanpur and our Common Future Fellowship from Volkswagen Stiftung, Germany. He has also written many books which are used as text references in various esteemed universities. One of the most famous, eminent Indian psychologist, 100 Years of Psychology in India, is written by him, published in year 2017. It gives me immense pleasure to witness his presence among us. Topic for today's discussion is managing mental health challenges during and post COVID-19. Therefore, I would be pleased to call upon Professor Brajbhushan to express his thoughts and ideas over the topic. Over to you, sir.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's my proud privilege to interact with the campus fraternity of MNIT Allahabad. I have been to your campus a couple of times, not many times, but a couple of times. And now that COVID has allowed us to go for an online interaction, I think Professor Pandey and his team, when they asked me if I would avail the opportunity to interact with you all, I was very pleased. And allow me 2 minutes time, I just share my screen and then we will go ahead with the presentation. So as you were told right in the beginning that the topic for today's interaction between us is how to manage mental health challenges. And this is during COVID and post-COVID. Of course, you may think that okay, there is nothing called post-COVID as of now because COVID issue continues. It's true that the issue continues, but when I thought that okay, what would be during COVID and post-COVID? Basically, I was looking at phase 1 as during COVID and phase 2 as post-COVID. Post-COVID, specifically, I must specify is when you say that when the second phase is by and large over. So to begin with, if you look at the demographic profile of any educational institution, any institution in the country, largely what we have is a group of the undergrad students, a group of MTech students, and a group of PhD students. I have put them separately because these are the students who vary in their age and therefore in their maturity. Okay. Why I have divided them, I'll much later I'll come to that as well. Why I chose to divide the student into 3. As of now, let's understand that we are looking at them separately, primarily because of their age difference and age, which also might have to do in many cases with maturity. The other set of people in the educational institutions are the employees and their dependents. They are, of course, above the age of the PhD students, definitely. The young faculty members or the young employees in the institute, in the registry cadre or in technical cadre, they must be, somewhere around the highest age of the PhD student or little above that. But then we have a big spectrum, somewhere around 17, 18 years of age to 65 plus. That's the range that any educational institution will have. And therefore, when we talk of mental health issues, there could be generic issues. Generic issues, basically, irrespective of which demographic group you belong to, these mental health issues apply to you. Those are the generic issues. And the profile-specific issues are basically, your age, your gender, your other life conditions. So those are profile-specific issues. Today, I would be focusing mostly on the generic issues. Okay, but towards the end, I would also like to slightly touch upon the profile-specific issues. Okay, and what are the bigger challenges that educational institutions have to face? Because you have to look at the welfare of, okay, or even if you specifically talk of mental health issues, then you have to think of the mental health of all the campus residents. Okay, right from the UGs to the most senior citizen on the campus. Now, what did we see in the year 2020? We had a couple of words that we added to our vocabulary. Isolation. This was a word known to us, but we did not know the context in which it was being used during early 2020, the month of March, April. Quarantine was perhaps a new word for many of us. We did not know what quarantine means, and now many of us have experienced it. Lockdown was the other word that came to our vocabulary. We knew curfews. Okay. We learned in the beginning we learned something like Janta curfew, but then it was immediately followed by lockdown, and then we had extended lockdown. Then two words that also got added to our vocabulary were epidemic and pandemic. Okay. And very recently we have black fungus and of course the yellow and the white fungus as well. So mucormycosis is the new word that has come. Now, why I am listing these words? It might appear as if these are information. These are piece of information, okay, which the experts knew, and now it is trickling down to the lowest person in the social strata. Somebody who has nothing to do with diseases, who has nothing to do with cure, who has nothing to do with health management. But all of us are aware of these words. What I am going to do today is to look at these words which have been added to our vocabulary, and then look at how these words, when they translate into real life experience, how do they affect our mental health. So let's first begin with isolation. Last year, there was a study in Lancet which came forward with very instant, I would say. Many of you must be aware, there is a word in science and technology, mostly in science, it's called speed science. Speed science means the speed with which a problem has come up. At the same speed, you also try to formulate a solution to that. Psychiatry or social science is a domain of knowledge where speed science doesn't work. Okay, you need to wait and watch what kind of symptoms appear, and only then gradually you can consolidate. And therefore, you might have seen that during COVID, there have been several revisions in the prescription that has been released by the health ministry. So the Lancet study said that stream isolation can result into three important things. And remember that these are empirical data-based findings. So it's not a hypothetical or a pure theoretical kind of derivation. It's hardcore data based. Three types of problems. One, what is called as post-traumatic stress symptoms, confusion and anger. Confusion and anger we all understand. Post-traumatic stress is basically when you experience certain symptoms of stress in the absence of the source. Okay, so mostly we have the source, and that becomes a concern for us, and that results into a stress symptoms. But in post-traumatic stress, the situation has already faded out. Okay, so there is actually no situation that should make us feel stressed, but still we have the symptoms, and the symptoms are somewhat weird in a sense that, for instance, you are busy doing something. So you have a thought going on in your conscious mind, and suddenly that source of stress appears. Okay. So this is called intrusive thought. So a thought has forcefully intruded into your consciousness, and that shakes you. Okay, you are emotionally shaken. Psychologically, you are perturbed. The other is that you are asleep, and then you have a dream. Dream is again something very common, but when you have a very adversely loaded dream, and that too which is repetitive in nature. Okay. So these are the primary symptoms of post-traumatic stress. There are many more, but we will concentrate only on the common ones. Confusion, of course, you understand that there is lack of clarity. And when we say anger, anger also involves a whole lot of irritability. Smaller things you are not able to digest, you simply get irritated. Last year itself, there was another study published in Frontiers in Psychiatry. This was a study on the medical staff, doctors, nurses, and paramedics. And this study found that 1/3 of the medical staff who were working in the COVID wards of various hospitals, they were suffering from sleeplessness. Okay, that's insomnia. And this sleeplessness or insomnia, okay, was also associated with feelings like depression, anxiety, and certain kinds of stress-based trauma. Now, stress-based trauma could be just on the periphery of post-traumatic stress, or it could result into post-traumatic stress after 30 days. I'm using the qualifier here, 30 days, because if you have intrusive thought or recurrent dreams, which is part of post-traumatic stress, but if that is within the range of 30 days from the onset of the stress, then it is considered to be a normal reaction. Okay, after 30 days, the clinical clinicians will tell you that this is a symptom of post-traumatic stress. So basically what I want to share with you is that terms like isolation and quarantine, which were part of our vocabulary in early 2020, started affecting our mental health, and it had an adverse effect. Now, little later, I'll again come to it, that anxiety and depression, these are two common, I should say, characteristics. I'm not using the word symptoms. Anxiety and depression are two common characteristics found in the students. Okay, mostly the UG students across technical institutes in our country. Okay, I'll share towards the end a survey on IIT Bombay students. Clear indication. There are a whole lot of studies. I'm sure your Office of Dean of Student Affairs and your health center and the counseling services at your institute would endorse it. That it happens. In all technical institutions, we have the highest number of UGs having problems of depression or anxiety. Now, these anxiety, depression, stress-based symptom, confusion, anger, and post-traumatic stress, all of them, they started evolving, manifesting as a result of isolation and quarantine. So imagine a situation, somebody in the hostel and being told that, okay, you have to now confine yourself for 14 days. Okay. We, of course, as human beings are gregarious in nature. We are social in nature. We are not designed to remain in isolation. That starts adversely affecting our mental health. So if you are asked to do so in the hostel, or if you came after the first phase of unlock and you were asked to remain in quarantine for 14 days at some place and then move to your hall, some of you might have experienced it. Or when you travel back home because the institute wanted you to leave the campus because of health concerns. And when you reach there, the district authorities or Arogya Setu or other government authorities or your own family members or the family doctor advises you that 14 days of extreme confinement within the house, something that none of us had experienced. So what would be the mental health outcome of such kind of isolations and quarantine experiences? Okay, so these are the ones that we have talked about. If you look at the prominent sources of stress during the first phase of corona, first phase, therefore I have put a stamp there that it's year 2020 that we are talking about. The duration of quarantine was important. So somebody who had full 14 days of quarantine versus somewhere who were much more cautious and therefore went for one additional week of quarantine. There were few who did not have any such symptom of COVID-19, but they were driven by the fear of infection. And remember, fear is far more dangerous than the actual symptom. Talk to your psychology faculty members in the institute and they will explain to you at length why fear is far more dangerous than the actual symptoms of any disease or disorder. Frustration, boredom, you feel frustrated. I don't know whether any one of you did it or any of your faculty members experienced it. We are into online model institutions. And I remember one of the students in my course in the previous semester, he had a profile picture which said that I am bored of this type of class. Okay, I want to come to the campus. Okay, and for entire semester, he had this wallpaper. Okay. You can understand, what's the frustration of being back home. Then, when you are back home, you have inadequate supply of commodities. The biggest problem also was the inadequate amount of correct information. Okay. Somebody in the family might have experienced financial loss. So you can talk to your faculty members in economics. They will explain you how behavioral economics talks about it. And the worst of it was that the families which had one or more than one members affected by COVID, many of them experience stigma. So stigmatization would mean that now you are completely detached from your society, from your community. People don't visit you. They don't prefer talking to you. They will now make one or two phone calls in the initial days and then even that will stop. Okay. So you are now branded as a carrier of COVID. Okay. And you realize that it starts affecting your social interaction. Coming back to the psychology of fear, there are a couple of words I'm sure all of you must be aware of it. Fear, we know what fear means. Anxiety, we know what it means. But in the case of COVID-19, it was realized that fear and anxiety would come close to each other. And both of these emotions, they exhibit themselves in the form of strong emotional reactions. And remember, when you show strong emotional reactions, your acceptance by others reduces. You may shout at your friend, you may hug your friend, you may smile at your friend. But if you continue smiling, the friend will not accept it as a smile. Okay. If you keep, if you hug your friend and you do not let him or her free, okay, this is no more a hug. No, it is an irritable behavior. Okay. Similarly, if you shout at someone, sudden and singular sparks are okay. But if you continue doing that, people will simply detach themselves from you. So fear and anger both has this issue of strong emotional reactions being exhibited. But what I want to share with you is from the older epidemic of Ebola in West Africa. In psychology, I don't know if you have come across these terms. Two terms. One is called phobia and the other is called hypochondriasis. I'll just briefly touch upon what this means. Fear, when you have a source to be afraid of, that results into fear. When you do not have the real source, you have an imaginary source, and therefore you show irrational fear, that is called phobia. And when you unnecessarily search for symptoms within you, okay, this is called hypochondriasis. So hypochondriasis, truly speaking, is not a disease or disorder. Okay, it becomes a psychiatric issue, okay, because you simply start searching for possible symptoms within you. So you will touch your pulse to realize that the pulse rate is abnormal. And of course, many of us nowadays are fond of Googling it. So it gives you 100 possible diseases and you choose the best of the disease. Okay, or I should use the word worst of the disease. I don't know, students of your age, if you have watched this movie, Rajesh Khanna's very old movie, very popular and very philosophical kind of a movie, Anand, where he uses a term that I have lymphosarcoma of the intestine. So hypochondriasis is something like that. Everything needs to be exaggerated mentally to give you an impression of a very deadly kind of disease. Now imagine you get an information about a prospective disease which can knock your door any day. Okay, you are supposed to be confined, and then you start searching for possible symptoms within you. Okay, hypochondriasis, till now I haven't found any report, but as I told you that social sciences, psychiatry, these are the disciplines of study where fact-driven things will come gradually. So I'm sure by 2022 or late 2021, we will have also papers and details of hypochondriatic symptoms during COVID-19. Coming back to Ebola, when in West Africa, Ebola evolved, the Western media, especially the American media, used the term called fear-bola. Okay, fear-bola basically was to represent hypochondriasis, although hypochondriasis becomes too technical a term, therefore they use the word fear-bola. And why did they use this term fear-bola? Because it was realized that only few cases, only 10 confirmed cases of Ebola was found in US citizens, and all of them had actually gone to West Africa as part of the health team of WHO. Okay. So they came back, only 10 of them contacted the disease, and they were put under 21 days quarantine, unlike the 14 days, 2 weeks quarantine that most of us are experiencing right now. But what was realized that although only 10 people were affected by Ebola, large number of parents in the US schools at that time, they started pulling their children out of their school. Okay. Now this is a kind of reaction that people show. Okay. Even if you remember the early days when we were told that you have to wear a mask, and we came to 2021 when we were told that okay, now you have to put double mask. So things keep evolving, and the more the information is added, the higher is the risk that people who are susceptible to phobia and hypochondriasis, okay, they will develop extreme fear. And again, another word which is used in psychology and as well as in the clinical literature is somatic amplification. Soma means body. So bodily processes, when you amplify it multiple times, okay, that is called somatic amplification. And what do we do in somatic amplification? We look at our perceptual experiences, and we have our own cognitive process, thought process, and our perceptual and the cognitive processes both go multi times, they go up. So we are perceptually processing n number of information now. Okay, and we are cognitively also processing n number of experiences now. Okay, those of you who are familiar with the basic biology, Again, human brain is not designed for that kind of process. So somatic amplification is bound to add to the cognitive discomfort. Cognitive discomfort in the state of fear, hypochondriasis and phobia is again likely to adversely affect our mental health. There is another interesting symptom. It's called nosophobia. Noso means disease. Phobia, you understand, irrational fear of any disease. So nosophobia would mean that you have fear of a specific disease, unlike hypochondriasis, where you search for n number of symptoms and you look at the laundry list of the diseases. In this case, you search for a specific disease. My hunch is that because we do not have data of hypochondriasis during COVID, my hunch is that the maximum number of COVID cases during COVID 2020 and even in the second phase was of nosophobia. And nosophobia is also popularly called as medical student's disease. Okay. For others, the non-medical student, it's called cyberchondriasis. Cyberchondriasis, it's just a replacement of hypochondriasis. So you have n number of information available in the cyberspace. You search for those, and you do not have that quality to go for a litmus test of these symptoms, no? Unlike the doctors do. What doctors do, they go for differential diagnosis. Okay, so they differentiate between the possibility of 3, 5, 7 diseases, and then they pinpoint on one, because symptoms are always common in a set of diseases and disorders. So, in case of nosophobia, what happens? Why it is called medical student's disease? Because when they are exposed to the symptoms of various diseases, they imagine that at least 60–70% of the diseases are within them. I can share my own experience. When I was a student and I was doing my clinical psychology course, when we would read, all kinds of diseases and disorders, all my batchmates, including myself, at least 50% of the symptoms of all the disorders you can find in yourself. And it takes time to realize that no, there is somewhere a litmus test. Normal behavior can convert into a disorder or a symptom of a disorder, but then it has to cross the threshold. Okay, and what crosses the threshold, at what limit, and which set of characteristics should cross the threshold simultaneously to be classified as a single disease or disorder is something that only experts can do. But we, as what you call people familiar with the cyber world, we will Google many things, and I shouldn't be using that word, but many people in the media, in the mainstream media, who are neither familiar of the medical sciences, who are not familiar of the psychiatric or social psychiatry or clinical side of the psychology, but they gather information in bits and pieces from some open sources, and then they present half an hour long program. Okay. Aaj ki baat, health ke saath, likewise, different kinds of program they will project for you. And this feeds you in the wrong way. What is the outcome? When we come to year 2021, at that time we will again touch upon this issue. So, hypochondriasis and nosophobia are the two, I would say, deadly kind of a mental health issue that one should be very much aware of. And the mental health professionals, they club them together and they call it, these are actually illness anxiety disorder. You are anxious about an illness. Okay. And your anxiety is not a normal kind of an anxiety. It is now just taken the shape of a disorder. The clinical literature, of course, not related to COVID, but other old problems, suggests that those who have the problem of bipolar disorder, bipolar means sometimes you are in the manic state and sometimes you are in the depressed state. Okay, those who have schizophrenia, or those who have clinical depression or obsessive compulsive disorder. So these four disorders, those who are vulnerable to this, they equally become vulnerable to nosocomial. Okay. Now let me add a rider here. Obsessive compulsive basically is when you repeat certain action. Okay. Now washing hands multiple times in good old days was considered to be one of the remarkable symptom of OCD. But now in COVID period, we are told that you have to wash your hand, okay, every now and then. Okay, whenever you touch a surface, you have to wash your hand. So I'm sure that after 5-7 years, you would realize that even the psychiatric literature will say that if you have intensified symptom of OCD, especially washing hands or sanitizing your hand or cleaning your clothes and the linens repeatedly, okay, that should not qualify for OCD, because now we all are trained for it. We are demanded that we should be doing it to ensure that you do not get infected. So again, I'm sure this will gradually evolve and come in the years to come. Now, this is one of the dangerous figures which we started looking at 2019 end December, I guess, when Indian media started showing the image of the coronavirus. But till now, whatever we have discussed was a phase that did not disturb us that much. But when the transition took place in 2021, this virus gave an impression of something like this: death, despair, hopelessness. Okay. These were the prominent experiences that came to us in the second phase of COVID. And this is where our COVID symptoms have become extremely challenging from the point of view of mental health. This is the unfolding of COVID in India, starting from 14th March 2020 to 9th June 2021. This site updates after I think alternate days. No? So this is what I got last night. So I thought that let me share with you. All of you are familiar with it. You Google it. This is the first image that will come when you look at CSSE data of COVID-19 in India. Now, as an educated human being, as a technology student, when you look at this data, fine, you can interpret it in multiple ways. Okay. In fact, the production model, the supermodel, Supra, the two models that have come forward for prediction of COVID-19 spread, they bank on data like this. But the reason I'm showing this data is that when you see light, it doesn't look like a graph plot. The graph that you see here and the second phase, which appears from somewhere 15th of April till June, okay, when we the last end of the peak that you see here at this point. Okay, when you corroborate the data presentation with the real life experience, there is a big jump. Our mental health is not decided by this kind of data representation. Our mental health is decided by this kind of representation. So the image that you see, multiple images. So each point of the graph, okay, would have some kind of a mental imagery for all of us. And this mental imagery would be waiting for oxygen cylinders, patients with symptoms, with breathing problem, all kinds of ailments in the ambulance, and still waiting for 7-8 hours outside the hospital. Large number of dead bodies being ferried outside the hospital. And even in the funeral ground, when you have a stack of dead bodies being cremated simultaneously. Okay, and in the center you have our Rambagh, which was so expensive, and many people had difficulty finding this injection. Okay, considered to be the life savior at one point in time during the second phase. So the reason I showed you this transition was that when you look at numbers, when you statistically plot the graph, you do not get the psychological symptom. Your mental health is not disturbed. mental health gets disturbed when each dot that is used to plot the graph represents one of these mental imagery. And all of us have some kind of a mental imagery. Primary experience of oneself, secondary experience through a family member, secondary experience through a neighbor, friends, many. Okay. I'm aware even MNIT lost one of the esteemed faculty member there due to this. We at IITK lost two of our employees, one student. Aligarh Muslim University lost many. The number is in double digit there. So that's the reason I'm trying to say that irrespective of how you plot the graph and what model you use to predict, the mental health gets affected because each dot is staying in our mind in the form of one of these images. So what happens? There is a big information flow. Okay. And the way things have been shown to us from 2020 to 2021, there was a heightened information inflow, but in 2020 it was about the disease, in 2021 it was about death. Okay. Unavailability of resources, okay. Right from oxygen cylinder to beds to experts, everything. And therefore, psychologically, what did we experience? We experienced several unexpecteds. Okay, and this unexpected set of unexpected things added to the looming devastation. So I, for instance, I did not get infected. None of my family members got infected. But that doesn't mean that I was free from the fear of getting infected. Right? And then this information flow that we had through the mainstream media and the net both was about the nature of the spread, safeguards, economy, self-sustenance. But then it gradually started becoming loss and helplessness, and finally somatic amplification. We had discussed somatic amplification some time back, that are both perceptual and cognitive factors. They get adversely affected because of the somatic amplification. Our brain is not designed for that. Okay, but unfortunately, nowhere the mental health or the behavioral aspect came into the public discourse. Okay, none of the mainstream media pointed this out. In the policy implementation also, if you see, we focused only on the infrastructure support. Okay, so flights were being used, helicopters were being used, ships were being used, trains were being used, lorries were being used. Okay, but all of them were for infrastructure. Even in the when we are preparing for the possible third wave, which is likely to affect children most, we are making up hospitals, we are creating beds, we are recruiting more number of doctors. What I'm saying is that we are still focusing on the infrastructure. Okay. The mental health and the behavioral aspect did not come either in the public discourse or in the public policy implementation. And for that reason, some of the educational institutes have been taking it very proactively. And thanks to the Dean of Student Affairs of MNIT, who decided that this student should be exposed to the possible consequences of what has been observed during the pre and the second phase of the post-COVID situation. Now, what would be the outcome? We discussed about the post-traumatic stress symptoms, and I told you that there are issues where we have a source of stress which is no more there. So COVID is no more there, but it has left an experience with us. So what is likely to happen? First 30 days, the intrusive thoughts, recollective dreams, all kind of jitteries and anxious behavior, those might come. But clinicians will tell you that first 30 days is okay. After 30 days, if the same set of symptoms continues, then do visit a mental health expert. Okay, because it gives an impression that you are a likely case of post-traumatic stress. And if the post-traumatic symptoms, it continues, okay, for the 90 days. 90 days is 90 plus 30, you should think that. So first 30 days, you don't have to worry. From the 31st day to the 90 days thereafter, means 120 days altogether. Okay, the symptoms are acute, and it's good to get into touch with an expert during this phase itself. Okay, do not allow the symptoms to go beyond the 3 months period. If it goes beyond the 3 months period, that means 3 months of acute, 1 month of onset, 4 plus 3. So after 4 months, if you start experiencing the symptom, then it is an indication of chronic post-traumatic stress, which will take longer time to leave you. Okay, getting rid of a chronic post-traumatic stress symptom is difficult, and therefore I'm suggesting that it's good that after 30 days, if you have any of these things, okay, do get in touch with a mental health expert. The other thing that we experienced in 2021 was mostly a great sense of helplessness, because our friends, family members, the close ones, they would ask you for help, and you simply are not in a position to provide. Okay. You became a victim, or one of your family member became a victim, but you couldn't do much. Finding a bed was a problem. Finding a place in the mortuary was a problem. Finding place in the burial ground or the cremation ground was a problem. Okay. So therefore, we are a populous country, and therefore, it backfired in a massive way. And therefore, many of us have experienced grief and bereavement. You were saddened to lose a loved one, okay, a friend, a neighbor, colleague, family member, a relative, okay, or somebody at distance whom you loved. Okay. Now, psychologically, there would be a pain that such kind of loss will incur. And many a times, such pains are overwhelming. If there is an overwhelming pain, you don't have to worry. Somebody has died, you are grieving. You are in the state of bereavement, and this pain is acceptable. But what you need to think is of profound sadness, shock, anger, disbelief. Disbelief means it can't happen. I just don't believe it. Or you develop guilt. If I would have done this, this would not have happened. So it leads to a feeling of guilt. And remember one thing, profound sadness, shock, and anger are easy to manage. Disbelief and guilt are little difficult. And between disbelief and guilt is the most complex thing to handle, because it will remain with you. It is just like a fungal growth, on any wet surface. So say for instance, if you have a white shirt or a white trouser, and it is infected by fungus, all black. How much you give it to the laundryman? It's very difficult getting rid of those black spots. Guilt is something like that. It gets ingrained in our psyche. It will any time get activated and will become a big source of problem for us, mentally speaking. In terms of physical life, it affects our sleep, it affects our eating mechanism, and most worst, it prevents us from thinking straight. And as an educated person, as a student of technology institute, Communal Technology Institute, you are supposed to think rationally, act judiciously. And if you are not able to think straight, then definitely thinking rationally, acting judiciously, those things will get compromised. Now, the major sources of grief and bereavement, if you look at it, okay, I have just selected few of them which are more perhaps common to students of your age. divorce or relationship break is unlikely to happen, except for might. I'm not saying that it would be common, but in exceptional case of PG students, it might happen. But loss of health, losing job for the final year graduates or MTech graduates could be a problem. That there was some scenario of placement which got adversely affected. Family member or father, the breadwinner in the family, had a loss of financial stability. Those employees who retired during this phase. But the most serious ones would be the loss of cherished dream for students of your age. You had planned at second year summer, I'll go for internship at that place. You had some earlier conversation with somebody. Things were by and large crystallized. And you realize that the dream is shattered. You are very worried about the serious illness of somebody who is very close to you, parents, sibling. You were very friendly with some of your batchmates from the department, from the wing, in the hall. And then you realize that this online business has adversely affected the degree of friendship. And loss of safety after a traumatic experience. So you had a reserve. Okay. And then somebody got infected, got hospitalized, and then you realize that all the savings were lost in saving one person, and that person also couldn't survive. So after spending 3 weeks, 4 weeks in the hospital, he succumbed to the symptoms. So you are experiencing a kind of a mix. You have a loss of a loved one, and you also have the loss of the safety net, financial safety net. So some of us have experienced all of this, and these are likely to trouble us psychologically in the years to come. It won't be days or months, it will be years to come. Therefore, there is a need for all of us to manage our grief. Remember one thing, that there is no normal timetable of grief. Should I cry in the morning? Should I cry in the afternoon, in the evening, twice a day, thrice a day? There is no such prescription. Therefore, somebody who mourns the death of a loved one more than you doesn't mean that he or she misses the beloved person more than you. So there is no normal timetable. In psychiatry, be sure of this. Second, there is no right or wrong way of grieving. One can cry, one can keep quiet, one can eat food, one can have disturbed sleep, one can walk alone, one can prefer to sit alone, one can prefer listening to sad music. All of this can happen. And there is no prescription as to what are the good ways of grieving and what are the not the good ways of grieving. Nothing like that. But what you need to keep in mind is, can grief be managed? And the answer is yes. So in terms of managing grief, first acknowledge your pain. Accept that yes, this loss has really shaken you, and you can express it. And you also accept that at times you come forward with unexpected emotions. You give disproportionate response. Accept it. And when you accept it, you tell the other person, that this happened to me, and since then I'm not in the right frame of mind. The other person will accept it. And because you are telling it to yourself as well, therefore you will not have the guilt of the unexpected emotion being exhibited to somebody else. Also remember that this grieving is unique to you. Okay, so others cannot join you. Other will come, pass some statement, stay with you. That's it. But this psychological warfare you have to fight alone. Therefore, do go for seeking out face-to-face support. And in this time when you are not supposed to meet people, finding face-to-face support is a problem. Okay, and this is where your local experts will come into play. And I'm sure because we have dearth of experts in the country, just 9,000 experts for this entire country. Therefore, the problem is far more bigger. And most importantly, take care of your physical health because in case your physical health starts getting compromised, then it will further aggravate the mental health issues. And while you follow these 5 steps, take the help of a professional to recognize the difference between grief and depression. Grief is accepted. Okay, grief is manageable. Okay, there is a cycle for grief. And even if this grief gives you some kind of a feel of post-traumatic stress, as we discussed, that also has a cycle, 30 days at max. It shouldn't go beyond that. But we as normal human beings, non-medics, we don't know to differentiate between grief and depression. And therefore, if you are grieving and if you are realizing that it lives with you as a moss, then you must meet an expert to understand whether this is grief or this grief has an element of depression as well. In managing grief, just some tidbits, something that you can do for oneself and for others. Face your feelings. Face your feelings means that you don't have to hide it. Tell it to yourself very vocally, very clearly. Yes, okay, I loved this very family member so much, and see, now he or she is no more. But then try to express your feeling in a creative way. After the first phase of mourning, 13 days, 15 days, or even 30 days at max. Try to express yourself in creative ways. Write something, write a diary, write a story, write a blog, interact on social media, express yourself. Do not confine those feelings to yourself. This can be heartbreaking. Okay. Also, try to maintain the hobbies and interests that you have. Okay. I'm sure your Gymkhana club would have a number of clubs. So whatever activities you are in, reactivate it. Try to remain active with those hobbies and interests. They will act as buffers. Okay, and of course, do look at your physical health. What you can do for others in the phase of grief? Turn to friends and families. Talk to your friends, talk to your family members. Tell them that you had this adverse experience and you are grieving. And also accept that many people feel awkward when they try to comfort you. Okay, so I might give a call to you to join you in your phase of bereavement, but I might not be very good in terms of expressing my feeling. Don't think that others are not joining you. Okay, they are joining, but also accept the fact that all of us are not good at expression of such feelings. Third thing, there is a strong evidence in literature that one can draw comfort from faith. Whichever faith you follow, okay, all faiths give you a philosophical solace. Therefore, activate that aspect. Okay, it is really helping. In fact, in psychology, if you look at the list of journals, you will find some 5-6 journals, reputed journals on religion, spirituality, coping. Okay. So all kinds of adversity, religion and spirituality, it acts as a buffer. It helps us overcome the problem. You can join a support group. Okay. You have experienced it and you have made a group which consoles others. And remain in touch with your institute counselor. He or she will give you the right kind of an advice. But then when you are managing your grief, be aware of few things. I should rather say that beware of few things and raise the red flag if these things are there. If there is intense longing and yearning for your deceased loved one, you are not able to forget. The person who has died, whom you have lost, keeps coming to you in the form of intrusive thought, in terms of images, okay. Or you simply deny that this person is not dead, his spirit is still around me. These are all denials. Okay, intrusion is a symptom of post-traumatic stress. Recollective images in either live state or in the state of sleep. These are symptoms of post-traumatic stress. Denial of death or disbelief is not a normal response. Okay. Or if you imagine that the loved one is alive, that is not the truth. It is just not going to happen. Or if you are visiting the familiar places, say for instance somebody in the family has died and you go to his or her room, you look at his or her belongings. These are not the right ways of grief. If you are developing a tendency to avoid things that belongs to your loved one because it will trigger the thought, recollection, that is also not a good thing. Okay. And if you have developed extreme bitterness and anger within you, then that is also not good. Your anger and bitterness will be exhibited towards all other things in life, okay, who are not responsible for this loss. And if there is a feeling of emptiness, you feel void within you. You feel your life is meaningless, empty. First 30 days, it's okay. Beyond 30 days, if you realize these symptoms are there, do visit a mental health expert because this is not the normal style of grieving. Towards the end, I'd just like to share a few things with you. That we are a populous country, crores of people who share soil and resources with us. In our country, every sixth Indian is supposed to need some kind of a mental health assistance. And 7.5% of the Indians before 2020 were supposed to suffer from some kind of a mental disorder. 2020, the estimate is that from 7.5 we have jumped to 20%. So now 20% of Indians require mental health assistance. And we have just 9,000 mental health professionals in this country. Okay. And all these 9,000, majority of them, not majority, I should say all of them are in the urban areas. And within urban areas, when these 9,000 people are catering to the urban population, only 70% of the people who really should have gone to a mental health expert visit them and they get that advice. That means 30% of the urban population who need mental health experts do not visit them, do not get it. So that's the state of mental health epidemiology in this country, which nobody is talking about when we talk about COVID-19, both 2020 and 2021, two phases that we have seen. Now let us look at some of the mental health concerns in the academic campuses. The major problems that all academic institutions across the campus report are stress, anxiety, depression, suicidal risk, drug and internet addiction, and relationship management issues. Falling in love, heartbreaking symptoms. Stress and relationship management, we are not going to talk about right now. Just to touch upon anxiety, because in MNIT, the students who are right now logged in and listening to me, most of you, majority of you would be in the age group of 18 to 25. Now, in the age group of 18 to 25, 50% of us, the Indians, are supposed to be anxious. 48.3% depressed. And the suicide rate in our country varies between 2.2 and 12.2, depending on different states. So on-campus suicides are also not something uncommon. And when we have internet addiction on the campuses, now you want people to remain online for 9 or 10 hours of the day. So all of this is going to backfire in the coming years. This was the survey of IIT Bombay that was thought of sharing with you. This was published in Hindustan Times sometime back. They conducted a survey last year of 450 students on the occasion of World Mental Health Day, that is October. 85% of the students, 450 is the denominator, 85% of the students said that problems in mental health are very common in IIT Bombay. If you repeat this survey in MNIT, I'm sure you will get similar kind of percentage. 93% of them said that the mental health problems were really psychological problems. They are not psychiatric problems. You don't need drugs and medication for that. You just need a competent psychological intervention. Most alarming, 71.3% said that academic pressure is the reason behind the mental health illness. Okay. And 52.2% said that they are worried about their professional future. Now, many of us, including me, when you conduct a course online and you say that no, this happens in the online exam, that happens in the online exam, lab cannot be done, fourth year students have to come, MTechs, they took admission last year for 1.5 years, they have not seen the campus. In 6 months' time, they will graduate. So you take admission, you pay the fee to not even see the campus, how it looks like. And your work is done. You are awarded a degree. Okay. Many of us might think that no, we have to maintain the rigor of the academic program, and without realizing that this academic pressure can also amount to some kind of a mental health issue. Okay. I'm not saying that this is true for all the institutes, but my hunch is that majority of the institute will have similar kind of a feel. If you wish, October is still far off. We are still in mid-June. You can run similar kind of a survey at your institute and see how things work. Not to point out the problem, but to find out what are the better ways of overcoming it. Now, I told you that we will also come across some profile-specific mental health issues. This is basically for the PG students and early career employees. Some of us know students in the PhD days nowadays get married. Sometimes even in MTech also, after we think we have been into job or get married and then join your MTech. It has been realized that 8 to 10% of men in the early phase of fatherhood, they experience depression. Because we have been talking about depression right from the beginning, I thought let me point it out again towards the end. This is common. Okay. This is a transition period of parenting, and this is common for them. Okay. Prenatal and postnatal depression is very common, and the highest prevalence is seen 3 to 6 months after the birth of the child, because you are learning how to behave as a father. Okay, which could be a very depressing kind of thing. Similar kind of thing has also been observed for postpartum mental health issues and depression, okay, in females. Postpartum means after delivery. So those who are in the PG category or early career employees, research staff, some of you might experience it. Don't get bothered about it. This depression is different from the clinical depression. Okay. This is just a transition phase of life, and therefore this should not bother you at all. Okay. Remember one thing, that if there is a greater parental involvement, then maternal depressive symptoms reduces. Means the depressive symptom in the mother reduces if mother and father both start sharing the caregiving for the small baby. Also, the depression level of the parents, especially the mother, and the amount of time that the father spends with the new infant. This is also supposed to reduce the problem behavior in the newborn later on when the child goes to kindergarten and nursery schools. Okay. So these are the things that one should keep in mind. And just to come to an end of my talk, so what are the overall mental health concerns in the academic campuses? In my view, the major problem is managing the entire spectrum. Why I say so? Because we have somewhere students at the age of 18, 19 who will join the institute, and we have employees and their dependents who are at a very advanced age. And if you look at the National Mental Health Survey, last done in 15-16 in India, the most problematic group in terms of mental health are those between the age of 30 and 49, and again those who are above 60. So like the Office of Dean of Student Affairs or the Counseling Service, They are designed to cater to the student fraternity. 18 to 25 is again one set of group which would have anxiety, depression, stress, these as prominent symptoms, and suicidal risk, varying from 2 to 12% estimated we saw. But the campus administration also has the responsibility of managing those who are in the vulnerable age group as reported by the National Mental Health Survey, 30 to 49 and again 60 and above. The other thing I want to just point out, and I don't mean anything else other than what I say, if you look at the National Mental Health Survey, it says that the neurotic problem and the stress disorders in India, the difference is tenfold between states like Assam, Jharkhand, Manipur and Rajasthan. Now institutes like MNITs, all NITs I would say, all national level institutes, they have a national level intake system. So you don't choose students of a specific state. Okay. So what the National Mental Health Survey also tells you, this is reading between the lines, that if you get students from vulnerable states, okay, the problem that your Dean of Student Affairs is going to face, or your counseling service and health center is going to face, is going to be far more if they come from the vulnerable states compared to if they do not come from the vulnerable states. And remember, intakes are always on academic ground, no? So you cannot use this as a filter. That means we have to prepare. Why I am sharing this? Because those who are into student management and health care management, mental health care management in NITs, they can think of this. No? You have the demographic profile of the student. So you know their age, you know which vulnerable state they are coming from. So you can prepare your system accordingly. And remember one thing, especially I am saying it for students, but it applies to all of us, that you have to learn managing academics and life. Academics is not life. It is only a small subset of life. Although you are devoting your entire focus on academic endeavors right now, but academics is not the full life. Okay, it's just as part of it. And therefore, when you try to manage mental health on the academic campuses, try building community life. Okay? I was very pleased, that you have a Dean of Student Affairs, like all other institutes, you have a faculty in charge, but then the responsibility of introducing the speaker is passed on to a student. Okay, I'm sure you must be having a number of hobby clubs, different kinds of clubs. Maintain community life, and those who try not to join these clubs, activate them. Tell them that you have to be part of something. Then psychological and psychiatric consultation, there is a taboo. We don't think that this is needed. There is no harm in it. Okay. See, I belong to the fraternity of psychology. Do I appear so dangerous to you that you will not feel consulting somebody? The way you consult a psychiatrist, a psychologist, the same way you can interact with the teachers in whom you confide. You think that, no, I can go and talk to this teacher of mine. Walk in, tell your teacher, they are grown-up people. They have seen life much closer compared to you. Tell them, sir or ma'am, this is what I am experiencing. Do you think I need a consultation? And I'm sure your teacher will help you. Okay, you don't have to always write formally to the dean to seek such kind of help. No? So that kind of a community life we need to build up, the way we have it in the family. Okay? You feel comfortable, somebody feels comfortable with the siblings, somebody feels comfortable with the mother, somebody with the father, somebody with grandparents, somebody with a friend. Similarly, so let the burden or onus of this task, whichever word you want to use, be distributed. It's not the office of the Dean of Student Affairs who is supposed to manage. It is not the institute counselor who is supposed to manage. Let's have a community life. Okay. Even the pass outs, those who have left the campus, many of them would like to contribute. Okay. So the Dean of Alumni Affairs can also contribute heavily to it. Then in the present time, because face-to-face counseling is a problem, telecounseling is something that you can think of. And especially I am requesting the students who are interested in socially relevant technological projects, either your BTP or MTP project or your master's thesis. Think of socially relevant things. We have many things. No? We have hypochondriasis, we have nosophobia, we have anxiety, depression, suicide ideation, suicide risk. Many things we have talked about right now, or even simply grieving, how to grieve, where you are, where do you stand. Many of these things can be converted into some kind of an algorithm. Life is not algorithm, true. Symptoms are not algorithm, true. But can symptoms be mapped to algorithm? Answer is yes. Okay. So many of you can contribute to it. No? You all are academically competent students who are into one of the well-known NITs. Take up these tasks. Then there is also a need for a holistic exposure to subjects. Don't confine to computer science, electrical, hydraulics. No, we have this tendency of drawing lines within lines. No? I'm in civil, but I'm only in retrofitting. I'm in retrofitting, but only in this kind of thing. Don't go by those kinds of things. Adopt a holistic exposure. No? And especially, you also have humanities and social sciences there. You have management department there. Life is too wide. Get exposed to as many things as possible. Later on, when you land up into the professional life, you won't get that much of time. Student life is the best life to get exposed to n number of things. Again, I'm repeating that be sensitive to social issues and go for creative engagements so that you develop a broader view of it. So that's all that I wanted to share. I just want to share a few more things. It's a kind of self-promotion, but in case you are interested, you can look into it. Last year, I wrote for a newspaper. It's Hard News. And I wrote an article called Mental Health and Corona, Better Late Than Never. If you are interested, you can search the web, you will find this. The other was Libido, Violence and Lockdown. This was mainly violence within the family during the lockdown period. Again, 2020 publication. This is pure for general public, not a scientific writing. On the left panel, what you see is the high time police becomes responsible, reflect and change. This was basically when police was resorting to lathi charge and whatnot to contain people. This was published by a Chandigarh-based newspaper called The Correspondent. During COVID, the health ministry came forward with last year. The health ministry came forward with a prescription that we shouldn't spit in public. This is very common, especially places where pans are very common. Varanasi, Allahabad is known for all this. And in Hindi, if you are good at Hindi or love reading Hindi, last year I wrote something on quarantine, lockdown and fear. Quarantine, lockdown or Bhai Ka Manolukya, published by News Time Post from Lucknow last year. And very recently, on 2nd of May, Panchajan published one article which talks about how to get rid of all these depressive and stressful symptoms using your creativity during lockdown. Recently, I started writing a blog. So this is Braj on Behavior. In case you are interested, this is purely in Hindi. It is meant for people of the Hindi heartland. Small blogs. And as of now, I have posted 6 of my blogs there, which also the latest one is on the vaccine hesitancy, why people are not taking vaccine, what is the hesitancy, how one can look into it. This is there is also one on anger, and it says कि क्या आपका गुस्सा कहीं अवसाद जनित. So if you are depressed, depression has a corollary. Depression can also result to some kind of an aggressive behavior. And if you are interested exclusively on mental health, the topic today, okay, the second last COVID-19, this was the blog. So I'm not recommending that you should read it, but I'm just sharing that I also resorted to creative writing, non-technical writing, not journal articles. This is just for non-psychology people, common people, those who are interested in net saving. If they want, they can read it. And it's again my pleasure to thank the Dean Student Affairs, Professor Pandey, Professor Abhishek, who was instrumental getting me connected to you all through mail and sharing link, and all of those who have been very kind and patient listening to me during this presentation. I'm sure some of you might have questions, so if you have a question, I'll be happy to answer.
Yes, any student want to ask any question can raise their hand, can write into the chat box. Professor Pandey.
I'm very much thankful to Professor Brajbhushan for delivering this very nice lecture. I have two questions. The first question is related to the OCD. Sir, you said that as people are washing their hands several times during this pandemic period, therefore this type of OCD may be, this type of thing may be taken out from the OCD category. But if a person is having a mild symptom or moderate symptom of OCD, of washing hands and others, then that may, this washing hands during this pandemic period may alleviate the behavior, and that may increase the OCD level, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true, sir. In fact, anybody who has a milder symptom of OCD, especially washing hands, would have magnified. The problem, the way the clinicians they look at OCD is that when the symptom is exhibited in action, like washing hands is an action. So that is the compulsive part of it. The problem is not the compulsive part. The problem is the obsessive part, the repetitive thought. So obsession is the repetition of thought and compulsion is the repetition of action. Now, if my repetitive thought is not an indicator of a psychiatric symptom, okay, rather it is a thought which is induced in me to warn me of a possible infection, and therefore if I am washing hand, then this symptom will not aggravate. But if it is COVID related kind of an alert, mental alert, then of course it will aggravate.
So under this condition, what a person should do? He should consult a counselor or something else?
Sir, I think say if somebody did not have OCD, see, for instance, if you wash your hand 5 times or 6 times a day, for instance, I'm giving an example. Say morning, after toilet, we wash the hand. During bathing, of course, we have cleaned the entire body. You go to the department, you touch the equipments, you wash your hand. You come home, have your lunch, you wash your hand before and after the meal. So altogether 10, 12 times, anyhow we were washing our hands. The problem has come when we have been told that you have to repeat it n number of times.
Yes.
So if it is something which is post instruction, then it is not preceded by a repetitive thought. So the compulsive action is not due to a repetitive thought, it is only a warning signal of possible infection. So nothing to worry about it. But if say there is a repetitive thought like say for instance like a guilt of doing something wrong, and you have that mental what you call fear, and therefore you think of wiping the floor time and again. So if you take your broom and the wiper and clean the floor 12 times a day, it is not cleaning the virus. It is basically driven by an obsessive thought. So one needs to understand this way.
Yes. Sir, my second question is about the fear. During this second wave, the people have so much fear about going out or catching again the infection, and the different other types of fears are there in the mind of students and the faculties and others. So what we should do for that?
Sir, fear management is a separate topic in itself.
Yeah.
But I can share with you that this is not something very unique. Okay, during all kinds of havocs, social havocs, such kind of behavior is exhibited in the society, and so has come this time as well, because we have seen our colleagues dying, family members suffering. So fear is bound to come in us. I think we should allow time to ourselves, so that the fear would sediment. And once the fear sediments, the clarity of thought will come up, which will tell us that, okay, this was just a time-bound fear. Now I can go to office, I can work in lab, I can touch my own research paper and thesis.
Yeah.
So that will happen. That will happen.
Yes.
But in case, sir, this thing continues beyond 30 days time period, then I think it's good to consult an expert.
Yeah. Sir, I will take this opportunity to just introduce you about the counseling and mentorship activities we do at our MNIT. In brief, I will say about this. We have a 3-stage type of counseling and mentorship program, and we have one professional counselor also. During this pandemic, he was giving his counseling through online mode, through this Microsoft
मैं अपना परिचय दे दूं?
हाँ,
सर,
Dr.
मैं
Kamlesh
परिचय दे
Tiwari
दूं?
is here. He was principal of Manovigyan Sala, Bureau of Psychology, Prayagraj, and now he is retired and giving his services in our institute.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
मैं अपना परिचय दे रहा हूं सर. नमस्कार सर सिंह साहब, प्रोफेसर साहब. मैं डॉक्टर कमलेश तिवारी हूं. मैं BHU से PhD साइकेट्री में किया हूं. और मेरा PhD साइकेट्री के बाद पोस्ट डॉक्टर फेलोशिप था, इफेक्ट ऑफ मैरिज ऑन एग्जिस्टिंग मेंटल डिसऑर्डर. मैंने बहुत से पेपर लिखा है एंजाइटी पर, डिप्रेशन पर, डर पर, और मैंने 10 साल BHU में काम किया डॉक्टर बेहरे के साथ, और उसके बाद 30 साल मनोविज्ञान शाला में रहा एज ए साइकोलॉजी. इस समय मैं 2 साल से यहाँ पर काउंसलर के रूप में कार्य कर रहा हूँ. इन बच्चों पर मैंने थोड़ा सा टेस्ट भी किया हूँ, और बच्चे अभी भी, जो आपने कहा ना, अवेयरनेस लोगों के अंदर नहीं है कि खुद चल करके आवे साइकोलॉजिस्ट के पास और अपना विचार रखें, ट्रीटमेंट रखें, या अपने उसके लिए आवे. सर का, पांडे सर का और डायरेक्टर साहब का बड़ा अच्छा रहा कि मेरा यहाँ किया. तो मैंने काफी बच्चों का अभी जस्ट इस समय फियर पर ही मैंने एक बच्चे का दिखा. जनवरी महीने में उसने इंस्टीट्यूट आना बंद कर दिया, इसलिए कि मैं जाऊंगा बाहर, छूंगा लैपटॉप, छूंगा मोबाइल, छूंगा तो मुझे कोरोना हो सकता है, इसलिए उसने. तो उसके गार्जियन से मुझे मिले, काफी मेहनत किया. 6 सेमेस्टर का बच्चा है. अब जाकर के उसके अंदर दूर काउंसलिंग से एक कोविड का डर से उसके अंदर डर भर गया था, जिससे वो एंजाइटी विथ डिप्रेशन, और इसके साथ साथ अपने को एक गड्ढे में जैसे बांध लेना कि हमें ऐसा ना हो, हम बच जाए इसे पैरानोइया सिजोफ्रेनिया, अपने को सेव करके दूसरे को भले हो जाए, मुझे ना हो, इसलिए हम न करें. अब जाकर पैरानॉइड सिजोफ्रेनिक हो गया था कि अपने चारों तरफ एक घेरा बना दिया था, इस घेरे में रहेंगे, कमरे से नहीं बाहर निकलेंगे, बाहर जाएंगे तो ऐसा हो जाएगा, इस तरह से था. थैंक यू सर, बड़ा अच्छा रहा, आपने बहुत अच्छी बातें बताया और काफी ठीक था, मेरे लिए भी सपोर्ट रहेगा. सर पांडे सर को भी अच्छा रहा कि मुझे आपने मौका दिया बताऊं. और थोड़ा सा OCD पे मैं ये करना चाहता हूँ कि OCD में अगर वो सिम्टम के बाद, अगर जो जैसे कि हाथ धोने के लिए मना किया जाए, वीपिंग टेंडेंसी हो जाए, घबराहट हो जाए, तो उसकी नीड है काउंसलिंग की. 30 दिन की बात नहीं होती. अगर डिप्रेशन में हो जाए, रोने लगे बच्चा, या ऐसा न करने से उसके मन में ये भाव हो जाए कि कुछ अनिष्ट हो जाएगा, कोई ऐसा अनिष्ट हो जाएगा जिसमें हम कुछ नहीं कर सकते हैं, इस तरह से भाव हो जाए. हमने असेसमेंट ऑफ डिसेबिलिटी स्केल इन साइकेट्रिक पेशेंट भी बनाया है. डायग्नोज टू अनडायग्नोज साइकेट्रिक पेशेंट इन सर्जन को, एथियस में मैंने इस पेपर को पढ़ा था. डायग्नोज टू अनडायग्नोज साइकेट्रिक पेशेंट इन सर्जन कोच. बहुत से लोग साइकेट्रिक प्रॉब्लम रहता है और उनको पेट में दर्द है, लेकिन साइकोलॉजिकल सिम्टम नहीं. थैंक यू सर. थैंक यू मान गया. थैंक यू.
क्वेश्चंस होंगे. हाँ, ठीक है.
Thank you so much, sir. Our MNIT has the privilege of having you, such an experienced person as a counselor. So thank you so much, sir.
Sir, Ishanchal Kashyap want to ask something. Ishanchal?
Yes, sir. So first of all, sir, the session was extremely comforting and really informative. And so my question is, so in the time of the pandemic, like we know that life has come to a standstill, and there hasn't been much progress academically and like in other parts of life. But even in like this time of crisis, there has been this feeling of being left behind or not making progress. So like there is this feeling of sadness among many of my peers and a lot of people that I've talked to in this situation, even though it's like a really it's a situation of crisis and it's really hard to cope with, but there is still this there's this longing of progress that there's this feeling that we're not making any progress academically and we are going to be left behind when this whole situation gets over. So what are your tips like on how should one cope with that emotion of being left behind or not making enough progress in this situation?
See, this is a feeling which is not only unique to you or your friends. Among ourselves also, we also have similar kind of feeling. Your project is stuck somewhere. The progress of your some research paper is stuck somewhere. In fact, journal reviewers are stuck somewhere. This is something which is very, very, very common. So, at the student level, I can understand that you have fixed number of years, or I should say rather fixed number of lectures to complete a course. And there would be some online evaluation mechanism which you might not be very comfortable about. Therefore, this kind of a negative feeling, sadness, or being lonely, or being on the periphery of this overall academic endeavor, I don't think you need to worry about it. The only thing I can suggest, of course, you have a very competent counselor at your institute, so take his professional help. I would suggest, let's say, talk to your friends. I'm sure you will realize that all your friends would have a similar kind of. But then talk to your instructors concerned. Talk to the teachers whom you feel very close to. Talk to your parents, all the relatives who are very close to you, whom you can share things very openly about. And you would realize that they too would share this experience, that all these are transitory phases. This sadness, is a transitory sadness. It has to die down, and you don't have to make any effort. Just you have to ensure that you are physically fit and keep yourself mentally engaged in something productive. Not thinking about the progress, not thinking about the courses that you missed, the grade that you got, or how unsatisfactory was the online examination or online class. This kind of things will remain. I think perhaps my guess is that even the coming semester is going to be online, at least till September, October. Only then things might improve. We don't know as of now. So we just have to accept that this is the reality. And growth that has been stopped today, it is not going to stunt my overall growth. I am going to evolve. I am going to grow. I am going to become a good student of technology. But this is a period where I will have to take care of my physical health, of my mental health, and whatever I can do with a little bit of online teaching and my own rigor towards the course. So do that, and I think don't worry about your sadness. In case you realize that your sadness is unmanageable, or you do not feel confident talking to any other teacher or any member in your family, then of course we have an institute counselor who would have access to other information related to you. Talk to him, and I'm sure you will get that.
Thank you so much, sir.
Ayush Kumar Singh.
Very good afternoon, sir. So it was quite an informative session. I've just has a question regarding to the thing like this feeling of being productive creeps in our day-to-day life, right? So rather than this feeling prevailing over us in a negative sense, how can we use it to our benefit? And I just want to know one more thing, like how much activity doing per day is can be considered as being productive, or like I can be content at the end of the day that yes, my day was productive and yeah, I'm going in the right direction. Because like we are kind of unguided or misguided, I should say, in these unprecedented times. So just wanted to know your say on this.
Frankly, Ayush, I don't think there is any quantification of this. You know? You cannot quantify how much of productivity is the real productivity. Content is, of course, something that is a feeling part, which only the person who is contented can experience. Nobody else can experience. So I don't know that there is any right way of being productive. The only right way I think of being productive or giving an impression to oneself that I am being productive is that I am not allowing the negative thoughts to continue haunting my consciousness. Okay. I know things are happening around. I know there is a shortage of certain kind of facility. I know about all kinds of deaths and despairs taking place in and around me. But I know that this is the truth for a select segment of people. Okay, I am fortunately not the one who is suffering, and therefore let me not get mentally carried away by these kinds of things. So at your age, what could be that I can contribute to and could consider that I am being productive? Say for instance, I am a student of electrical engineering and I decided, okay, this is a course or this is a topic that I lag behind. So let me read on my own. Or I think that, okay, recently I heard somebody developing supermodel, predictive model, or somebody came forward with another Sutra model for production, how this works. Okay, or the Sai model which came in the West, how did that model come? In fact, one of my own blogs I have written that there are some social realities which should be considered in that supermodel, which has not been done. Now, this is just like my thought process. For me, I can tell you that, say, if I write a blog, it takes long time, okay, 2, 3 days, 4 days time of some backward thinking and then some conscious thinking and then composing it. Typing in Hindi is another challenge. But then I do it and I feel I'm productive. At the end of 3, 4 days, I feel I've done something. Okay. So besides doing my routine thing, okay, writing a research paper or guiding a PhD thesis was my routine activity. Okay. Guiding external student for their master thesis was a routine activity. Something which is out of my routine and I am enjoying doing it, I consider that is productive.
Thank you, sir.
One last question, Shraddhe. Shraddhe Pathak.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, hello, Shraddhe.
Sir, I had a question like in lockdown, how to maintain a scheduled lifestyle? Like even we sleep early or late, we used to wake up late, causing whole timetable of the day to collapse, which further leads to lack of energy and enthusiasm whole day. How to cope up with this, like timetable?
Oh, that's a very good question. I must confess that in the early days of lockdown, even I experienced it.
Yeah.
So you feel sleeping for long because you know that there is nothing to be followed. But I think we are the blessed people, Shraddhe. You know? We are into academics, either as a student or as a faculty or as
Yes, sir.
lab staff. We are blessed because we have too many things that need only the what you call minimal infrastructure for mental food. So if you have books with you, if you have your laptop with you or any connecting device and the internet access, the world is accessible to you. So all you need to tell yourself is that fine, I have to wake up at this time. I'm not saying that you wake up early in the morning or the time that you use to maintain during your MNIT days. Maintain time of your choice. For example, I can share, I don't know about you, I can share that I wake up at 8 in the morning. Okay. This is something that I feel comforting and I do so. Earlier I used to have 8 o'clock class, then I used to wake up at 6 o'clock. Okay. Now I can take the privilege of waking up at 8 and this is something that I have been doing since my student days. I feel very privileged that I can do it again. Now, when I wake up, I know that there are certain things that I have to do. 2 hours, 3 hours of study I have to do. Remember that we are in a business where if we do not provide information to the brain, it will acquire information from undesirable sources. Okay. The undesirable sources would be from WhatsApp, from Facebook, from Twitter, from newspapers, from news channels. minimize those sources. I'm not saying that surrender to them or just stop them, but life can be happy without them. Yeah, I can share with you, Shraddha, that I think 2020, sometime in March or April, I got my dish antenna disconnected, and till date it has not been connected. And I feel very privileged because I watch news every day, but only half an hour at the channel of my choice. Earlier it used to go in the loop. So all kinds of news will come time and again. The same visual, the same news they will repeat how many times? 46 times. Okay, in 24 hours. This is how the news channels behave. So somewhere we are privileged, I will say. Look at areas of your choice. It could be dance, music, anything. Do devote some time to your physical fitness. Okay, because something in the body, chemical release has to do with the mental state. Okay, the counselors are at your end will explain you the details. We have oxytocin, we have endorphin. These are the chemicals which are released in the brain only when you perform physical. Okay, and do find reasons to laugh. That's the best remedy. Best remedy. If you look at Facebook or if you look at WhatsApp, don't go for all rubbish kind of inputs. Jokes that make you laugh. Watch them. Laugh. Because when we laugh, endorphin is released in the brain and it kills the stress. So there are ways and means of managing. Basically you are managing oxytocin and endorphin levels in the brain. Nothing more than that. Physical exercise helps you do that. Okay, jokes and the conversation with friends which makes you laugh, burst into laughter, kind of a laugh. Okay, do that. That helps you manage the chemicals within the brain. We don't know what's happening in the brain, but there are research which tells you how you manage it. All sadness, depression, anxiety will be gone. So I think manage only these two things and this period will happily pass.
Sir, last one question. Animesh, you want to ask something? Animesh Ranjan?
Yes, sir.
Quickly.
Thank you so much, sir, for this extremely good session, first of all. And so my question is actually is based on social media, actually. Sir, I often wonder if social media is a blessing and also a curse, but should I sometimes wonder if I should stop using it, or because it heavily affects your mental health. We all know that. So what do you have to say about that? I'm a little confused about
that. I have the same take as you have. I don't consider social media as a big boom. Let me tell you very frankly. You may disagree with me. I consider it more of a problem than a boom. The only positive advantage of it that you can exploit is whatever feelings you have and you cannot share, you can post it. So you have vented or you have a source of venting out, nothing more than that. But you must be cautious. There are 1,000 others who have also put venom on the social media. All kinds of things. Religious in nature, cultural in nature, derogatory in nature, very pathetic kind of information. But people are happy doing that. If you are the one who do not feel happy about it, do not log in. Okay. Or if you feel the urge to log in and post something, log in, post, and exit. So you are contented within that whatever I wanted to throw in public, I have thrown, but I'm not going to look at the shits of others. Okay. This is one way of managing it. Fortunately, some social media allows you, if you search for only a specific kind of items, their algorithm allows you to get feed of only those kinds of items. So that is somehow a good training exercise. They are using AI for this. That's one possibility. The other, if you are thinking of escape routes, that I don't want to use this, but I do want to go for other sources, which would be equally pleasing, but it will not give me unwanted exposure. Then say drama, music, movies of your choice. Okay, are the ones because you have complete control. You know what to watch and what to skip. Social media, you have to scroll and many unwanted things will come. Many of us are not very good at digesting things. And many of us are also impulsive to respond. So impulsively you type a response and then you realize there are 1,000 others who will respond to your. So there are series of cross postings, which again makes you vulnerable to all kinds of undesired information. So I think if you think that you are the one who is vulnerable to such things, do not like it, just skip it. See, we have only 24 hours with us. And I think after those 24 hours, at max we use only 10, 12 hours. Rest all is gone here and there. So you have to manage the social media, compulsion for social media only for those 10, 12 hours, nothing more than that. So therefore, I don't think it's a big task. I have done it for the mainstream media and I'm so happy. I'm so happy that I'm not exposed to the unwanted channels anymore.
Yes. Nevertheless, sir, session was very informative, knowledgeable, and interactive. So we should be very thankful to him that he spared his valuable time to get our students benefited and answered most of the question to the best of our satisfaction. So we are very thankful to him. We are also thankful to our director, sir, for his consistent support in organizing such type of events. We are thankful to Professor K.N. Pandey, Dean Student Welfare, for his support. I'm thankful to Dr. Vibhuti Tripathi, Dr. Ashutosh Mishra, and all faculty members, students, Shraddhe, Ayush, and all participants to be patient enough to listen all these things. I'm just getting a call, perhaps might be of Professor Bhushan. Hello. Yes. Sir, the time is there, but I think that was a connectivity issue. So because it is nearly, we are at the end of this. Thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, we are very thankful for your informative and interactive session, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. So he just called me and I asked him not to get again connected because it is the end of the session. So I'm thankful to all who attended this session. Thank you very much. Jai Hind. We can leave now.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.